This is Khatt Chronicles, design stories from the Arab world. And I have with me today Samar Maakaroun. Arab and British in equal measure, Samar is a designer and creative director who has worked with some of the world's biggest design studios, delivering transformative projects, including helping Apple to build their brand in Arabic. In 2021, she founded Right to Left, a multilingual design agency straddling cultures and typographic traditions. In 2023, Samar was invited to become a partner at the multidisciplinary, independently owned design studio Pentagram, firmly putting Arabic on the global design map. She's the first Arabic speaking partner and only the third woman to become partner at the firm's London office and the first Lebanese. Super proud. For our listeners who don't know what Pentagram is, Pentagram is the only major design studio where the owners of the business are also the creators of the work and serve as the primary contact for every client. Based on the conviction that great design cannot happen without passion, intelligence, and personal commitment, this is demonstrated by a portfolio that spans more than 5 decades, many industries and clients of every size. Welcome, Samar, to the Khatt
Hi, hello.
Chronicles. Hello,
Thank you.
hello.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
Ahla, ahla. I'm sure everybody is thinking about your experience in Pentagram and what got you there and how you got there. Let's start with that from the end.
How how I got there? By accident, I suppose. Well, I mean, yes, it's interesting, like how you mentioned a little bit about Pentagram. It's a company of about 23 partners, 24 partners, and it's ever changing the number of partners and the names that come in and go. It's like a sort of exit entry. So people come in, they produce the best work. The culture is very vibrant. And then 5 years later, 10 years later, 15 years later, they retire, or they move on to other things.
Mhm.
And through that process, it creates a culture of like, bringing things to the group and then sort of learning from the group. We
Mm.
are I've been there now about 8 months. I mean, we are a very sort of different group of people. And sometimes when we go to our partners' meetings and you look around and you think, this is actually a fascinating business model because these people don't have a lot in common. Like we don't really choose. You join people who have been already there, and then you influence like who's coming next, what sort of new ideas they bring. So it's sort of fascinating and mad in equal measures, I suppose, as a group. But but this contributes to how to the texture and to the variety of the work, and it also contributes to how we learn from each other. Because
Mm.
if you're just running your own business, you're just stuck into your own world, right? You do the things you're comfortable doing or you like doing, and you don't
Mm.
see how other creative directors operate, how they run their business, what makes them tick, what sort of work, how do they talk about their work. So yeah, it's a very unique model in many ways. And how I got to it, I worked with Pentagram for about 5 years. I was brought in by Angus Highland. Then I ended up collaborating with Marina and with Dominic Lipa.
Mhm.
And then lockdown happened. And after lockdown, I set up
As a
the studio
freelancer, you mean, or a part timer?
as a freelancer. Yeah, I was a freelancer.
Mhm.
I was, an independent consultant, but I ran big projects for them. Then lockdown happened. I set up my own studio. 1 year in, I get a call from Marina saying, "Hey, we're thinking about you to propose you for a partner. Are you interested?"
How
Now
did
that
that
we're
feel?
running it. Well, the process is very long. So there's multiple votes. You have to meet everybody and get along with everybody, and it's kind of like a sort of a long affair of sort of talking to everyone and understanding what it means for you, and they kind of sort of are assessing what would you bring to the group and all of these things.
Mhm.
So I was flattered. I think everybody who gets asked is flattered, but I also knew like it may not go anywhere because there's been stories of multiple people whose names like it only takes one person to say no or
Mhm.
not to work. So
Oh,
it's
so it's not
consensus.
a democratically elected
It,
process.
no, it's not the majority. It's everyone. All decisions have to be agreed by everyone.
Mhm.
And this is kind of what makes
Interesting.
and I think the logic behind that is that the best ideas rise to the top. If someone
Exactly.
has an argument against, then we shouldn't do it. And then
Mm.
it could be brought up against, like if you're discussing something, it could be brought up again in a few years' time.
Mm.
But somehow it sort of needs to be everybody thinking it's a great idea.
Mm.
So it's like
Mm.
power by numbers, I guess.
When
Or
I was reading your bio, it's Arabic speaking partner and not Arab. Are you the first Arab, or
there
you
is
don't?
no other.
There's no. Okay.
No.
All
I mean,
right.
it's
Are
Arabic
you the
speaking,
youngest?
but
Yeah. I
no, I'm
mean,
not the youngest.
no, you're not. Okay.
There is no, I mean, this is also what's fascinating about the group. Like, there's no age limitation. There's
Mm,
no sort of identity limitation. It's a really very mixed group that comes from different social classes, different aspirations. And
mm,
I think what they look for is a type of person, I think. We talk about this all the time. What type of person can make a partner? It has to be
mm,
like someone who's quite independent, also able to make quick decisions. A love of craft is a must. We're all makers. We love making
exactly.
things, but at the same time, also a vision of sorts. And of course, like it's a business as well. You have to like to some extent running a business because we're almost like 24 different smaller businesses within one big business. That's
Mm.
how we operate.
And it
So
takes
our
time for you
teams,
to, yeah, it takes time for you also to get into the business model of Pentagram, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I've
mm,
been given like a time span of 7 years, 5 years. Like most people say, it takes 8 years to get used to how this machine works,
wow.
which is very long. I'm
Yeah,
planning to
it's
do
a
it in less
very
time.
long
So
process.
everybody looks in.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. I'm
But
sure.
yeah, I guess what they mean is that you keep discovering stuff you didn't
Mm,
know
mm,
until like 8 years you start to feel okay. I've got this. I know how it operates. But there's like a lot of surprises and changes, and just the nature of having 24 people involved in decision making.
mm,
Then that makes it. You hear other people's point of view. Sometimes you change your mind as well. Like
mm,
you sort of.
mm.
So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of the oldest design companies, and the model, the business model, is quite unique. So I'm sure you'll take your time adjusting
yeah.
from right to left studios to Pentagram.
I know, right? Like
Yeah,
a team of 4 or 5 to like this
yeah.
whole thing that
So
yeah.
let's go back then to how you started. When and why did you decide to become a graphic designer?
I grew up in Tahrir where my parents were. We're a family of 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. And at the time, I think it was very much, and I think it still is sometimes in some families that, the you want to do a career that makes money. So creative careers didn't really count. I'm not sure what your students tell you these days,
Mm,
but like if you're rich, you can afford to go become an artist, or because no one expects you to make money. So at the time, I think I was good with sciences. So it was kind of, yeah, maybe I should do something scientific, but I didn't like blood at all. So this was never going to be anything to do with medicine. So that was out. So it was going to be like physics or mathematics or something like that. So that was an option. But actually, like I knew on a sort of deeper level, instinctive level, that I wanted to do something creative. I just found a lot of joy in doing and kind of making things and sort of coloring and creating things and doing costumes on Halloween for I would dress the whole family with different costumes made out of paper and card. And
mm.
so I got accepted in 2 majors at AB. It was mathematics and graphic design. And I agreed with
What's
my
the
parents.
difference?
Yeah, I know, like nothing to do, nothing in common. And I agreed with my parents that I would go and register for math. So I go to college, I register to study math, but then I couldn't leave the campus. I just felt, oh, well, I just saw a very gray, black and white life ahead of me. And I'm like, no, I need some color.
So,
And so I go to the department of graphic design and I just go to the library and I start looking at the books and I'm like, "Oh, this feels a little bit more like me. Like I want to be here. I don't want to
mm.
be in a mathematics department." So I swapped the cards. And then I had an hour on the journey back to work out a story I would
To your
tell my
parents.
parents. Yeah, like what am I gonna say? Like how am I gonna spin this?
Mm.
But eventually I didn't really spin it very well. I just said, okay, look, this is what happened. And the reaction was actually quite reasonable. My dad said, well, it's your life. So I don't know what this graphic design business is, but it's your life. So you're in charge of your future.
So how do you? Okay, so you had to explain it to your parents what graphic design. Did you know what graphic design
No,
was?
I didn't. No, no. I just said, look, I swapped the cards. I know you were expecting a mathematician from this family, but it's gonna be a graphic designer. I'm sorry. It was like,
Okay, let's jump to now. Let's
yeah.
jump to now. How do you explain what you do now to lay people? I mean, people who are not in the industry. How do you
I think
explain what
people
you
know
do?
people know a little bit more what is a logo, not
Mm,
necessarily a brand. Like if you're really like out there, you would understand that you make signage somehow, like signage, something printed, something colorful. This is like basic. But actually, with the advance of Apple, Google, like people know these brands. So when you talk about brands, they actually maybe do understand on an instinctive level. They wouldn't know the day-to-day of like, what is involved in creating a brand. Like there's a strategy phase. What is the strategy? Sometimes we do have to explain this to clients. But I think the understanding is much better than 20 years ago.
Yeah, sure.
No, not precise, still not precise, but whose career is precise? Like, you go to a doctor sometimes and you ask them to cure you, but then say, we don't know what's wrong with you. So you kind of like, doctors don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything's ever changing.
So where did you study?
So I studied at AB. The course at AB is 4 years. It's wonderful. We were sort of taught by Leila Musfi, who set up the course. And I think like it took me about 2 years to just sort of understand what this is about. And it's kind of essentially about telling stories. But in our course, we got taught by so many different people, so many different teachers. And maybe it was because it was the beginning of this course. So Leila was probably experimenting with different teaching styles. But that made our group so
Yeah,
kind of
your group is
rich.
quite infamous.
Yeah, so it made us like quite rich because we had different sort of approaches to design. One person was more organic and flowy. One other person was more precise. Another person was more historical, intellectual. So we got all these flavors.
And the
each one
program
was-
allowed for it.
Yeah,
Allowed for that
Yeah.
wide range.
Yeah, I do remember actually at the time having one class and kind of wondering, but they said the opposite in the previous module. Why are they doing this? And then it kind of like all comes together in the end. Like
It's
you kind of
always a
see
problem with
the angles.
students who
Yeah.
want a straight answer.
There is no
And-
straight answer. It's all about nuance.
Yeah, we all know that now.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And what was your inspiration along your professional career? If you now jump 20 years later, what was your inspiration during your studies, and how do you get inspiration now? Where do you find it?
I think I'm naturally a curious person, curious about everything, like not just about design and sort of history of design, but more about art, about people, how people tick. The good, how does the good happen, and the bad, how does the bad happen, and how do you justify it? So human nature, I think, and nature in general.
Interesting.
So you sort of like, I feel like I do have maybe an observant side in me that's always kind of watching what's going on and sort of trying to see the unseen in a certain scenario, like when a group of people are gathered around and you just kind of watch, and you can read a lot more than what is being said into a certain situation. I'm very curious about like the arts, literature, lots of reading, and I guess like in my work I make links between stuff that I've seen. So I take things from here, things from there, and you just kind of, that's sort of what design
It's
is.
always
Like,
out.
to tell it, to
That's
tell a new
to the
story.
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in your work, there's one project that is really eye-catching for us, at least for those who know you from right to left. There's the project 29 words or 29 letters. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of that project?
Yeah, so I think this project started because I wanted to have at the time I didn't have a website. Like after 15 years of work, I didn't have a website. But most of my projects were sort of tied with the NDAs and done with other companies. So I was like, okay, why don't I just kind of create something more fun to do on the page as a front of the page. So like for example, when you work with Apple, they tell you can't post anything on about this work. So I was like, okay. And one of the things that I found myself doing repeatedly in London is explaining Zanfa to people whose plates I'm using or glasses, because like they just don't get it, and you spell it and then they find yourself like, okay, this is what it means. Can you smell it? It's not, and the fact
How
that
do you
food-
explain it in English?
I just
the
like,
best
they have to
explanation-
smell it. Yeah, you have to
Do they
smell
smell it?
Yeah, I was told actually recently that there is a word for it in Italian, but not in your other European languages.
Okay.
I will stand corrected, but I think maybe the Arabs and the Greeks will have a word for this, but it's not. And if you don't have a word for something, you don't have a definition. You don't know what it is. It doesn't exist.
Exactly.
So in that case, so I was just kind of like, okay, let's extend this. Let's see what can we do. And it just ended up being like a cascade of, and this was done very quickly. I worked with an animator at the time called Miguel Desport, and I would just kind of like show him a sketch and say, okay, this should move like this in the spirit of this word. And I mixed it up, and it wasn't supposed to be correct or accurate or sort of a dictionary. It's actually me doing what I want because, I didn't have a client. Yeah.
For our listeners, 29 words for 29 letters. You can look it up online. They are basically a group of words in
Yes.
Arabic that you've lettered and you've animated, and super interesting work. So yes, go ahead.
So yeah, so it started like this, ended up being 29 words, and I changed them, but nobody notices. So
Mm,
sometimes I do an invite for something. We spent some time animating the invite, so we swap something on the
mm.
page.
Do you see it
So
growing? Do you see the project growing?
I attempted once to do it for other languages. I
Mm,
think it would be interesting to do. But all these projects kind of need time. So one day it will. It has actually, I've done like a very long interview about it in a magazine called Stir
mhm,
magazine, based in India. And the journalist who did it asked really deep questions. And I suppose, like, I think at the beginning she asked this question about what was the inspiration for this project. I kind of like remember the book that I read by Junot Diaz called The Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. And in the book, I think the linguistic description, he'd be speaking in English, and then all of a sudden he would change to Spanish without telling the reader, without actually giving you any notice, and he doesn't even try to explain, and then he goes back to English, and then he goes back to Spanish. And the things that he explains in Spanish are things that cannot be translated. And
mhm,
what I found these moments surprising while trying to read the book, and in the experience that that he takes you through, it sort of surprises you, it excludes you. But if you're maybe someone who's knows a little bit of Spanish or Latin, you sort of want in, so
mm,
you try to read that sentence again to really understand what he meant.
mm,
And there was some mystery in that game, in the fact that he took liberty to tell his story in the two languages that are his, and he sort of didn't apologize for it, or didn't try to translate or to. And what that made the reader do, or at least me, I mean, I don't know how other people felt when you're reading it. You're not necessarily you're surprised, but you're also more engaged and you're
yeah.
paying more attention.
And also, I
So
think as a Lebanese, you would identify with that. I mean, we are
yeah,
also shifting languages quite easily without realizing between French, English, and Arabic, aren't we?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
like words like wala, or yalla, hon,
yeah,
these are the
yeah,
words that we saw on 29 words for 29 letters, right?
yeah, absolutely. Because like also you cannot eliminate them from your speech
Mm,
pattern. Even if you're in a meeting, you find yourself someone saying yalla to someone who
mm,
has no idea what you're talking about. And it's funny when people start to use it back at you. You know, yalla, let's go. Like, you know, my project manager saying, yalla, let's do this. I'm like, oh, all right, okay, she's speaking my language now. Like,
But one of the animations that caught my eye is Arabi Gharbi.
yeah.
It is such a loaded contrast that you simplify it with one dot. And in the context that we're living in today, do you have anything to say about that? How does it, I mean, when you did it, probably it wasn't as loaded. And
I
now,
suppose, yeah, no, I suppose like it was this not like noticing that the difference between being
one
Arab
dot.
or Gharbi mean foreign, right?
Mhm.
Gharbi and Western.
And Western.
Gharib is from Gharib and is from Western.
Mm,
So are you here or there? Are you us or them? Are you? And the difference is just one little dot. And I think the choice of these two words for these two letters was deliberate in the sense that, you know, is what's the difference between us and them? However, you
mm,
defined the us and you define the them.
mm,
And it's a like linguistic coincidence in a way, because you wouldn't notice it unless you put the two words next to each other and you're like, oh, look at this. There's
mm,
just a dot between being in or out, right?
exactly.
Are you in or out? And this doesn't just apply to, I think, Arab or foreign. And for me, the conceptual thinking behind this is
Absolutely.
us and them. You know,
Mm,
and us and them is now where the world is going. I think like we have elections coming up. In France, there's elections coming up, and you feel the world is going more and more right wing, more and more towards
mm.
us and them, as opposed to, you know, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Who are the
The fissure
same?
is growing rather than diminishing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I mean, if you look back at your career, what would you describe as the project you're most proud of? Like, I'm really proud of doing that project. I enjoyed doing that project. Or maybe you enjoyed doing something that you're not so proud of now. Or
See, that's the thing. I think being proud of a project should always be in the future. So I'm gonna because every project you do, you want it to be better than what
Exactly.
came before. And a lot of times you do something and when you see it out, you're like, I wish I fixed
Mm.
that little thing, or and when you notice something that sort of got away, then you're like, oh no, I'm gonna do, so you don't really. So it's in the future. Is the simple answer. It's not out yet. It's a book that we did with a charity called Skate Pal, and actually should be out very soon in about a month. This book also, I think, is it started before what's happening in Palestine at the moment. So it started a year ago, 2 years ago.
Mm.
And this charity, what they do is they build skateboarding parks in the West Bank and in Palestine. And the idea behind it is to, through play, teach kids to overcome one obstacle at a time. Very beautiful story, very simple. They've been doing it for 10 years. They came to us to do a book about language because they were going to hand over the charity to their Palestinian counterpart. And we started working, we did a survey, we found like lots of sentences, favorite sentences from Palestinians all around the world. We did a drawing for each sentence, and then a joint pentagram 4 days later, the whole thing started to happen. And then the genocide, let's call it what it is. And it sort of changed the meaning of the book.
Exactly.
We were almost done. This was one of the sentences in the book was what a Palestinian would answer for saying, how are you doing? So كيفك عايشين بيقولوا عايشين, they say, like we're alive. So we designed that book, that word, but then at the same time, we kind of think this word, the meaning now in 1 year
Has changed a lot.
has changed so much, because what it meant when this guy volunteered this word, what it means now is like there's a sort of sea of difference.
Yeah.
What it means to be alive in Palestine today.
Yeah.
And somehow like it just sort of made the word more potent in a way. Because of contextual changes, the word didn't change. We actually had finished the book. We just paused sending it to print because of the events. And now it's almost out. And we decided to go ahead because what are you going to wait for other than a miracle to erase all this pain? But somehow it's, So I think I look forward to this being out there. It's going to be for sale. So
Great.
to raise money for Escape.
Yeah, great. This is always a question that I find difficult also. What is it about your work that you find most difficult? What is the stage in your work that you find most difficult? At the beginning, in the middle, towards the end, after you've given it or after you've finished it?
Okay, I'm going to tell you first what's the most enjoyable part of the work, and then I want to tell you what's the most difficult. For me, the most enjoyable is the beginning of every brand project. So when you have a brief and you're kind of like, what can we do?
The excitement is up there.
Yeah, exactly. What can we do? Go wide. You go as wide as possible, and you sort of like explore everything and anything. And I usually try to really protect time to make the exploration as deep and as wide as possible. So that's fun. And I put usually all my team on this phase if I can at any one time. The most difficult, I think, is scope creep. When people ask, we call it scope creep. When people ask for a lot more than what you agreed in the proposal, and then, you find yourself having to do it. It's more time, more effort. It's just them having a bargain. I think this is a problem for every kind of operating team or company. I find the negotiations, we try to make our proposal super clear. Like, this is what we can do. This is how long it's going to take. This is the number of people we're going to need to use. Then sometimes you have the odd person who says, okay, well, no, we want 200 extra pages. We want a website design. We say, well, this was just doesn't include UX. And sometimes it's an easy conversation, but sometimes it's not. It's a bit, that I find difficult. And
the
I think
tedious
also
part of running it.
hard to limit as well, because you can never predict where you're going to land. You know from experience, this is the typical process. This is what we think this client needs. But sometimes, you get more people involved. They don't like what's been done. You have to kind of redo stuff. Like, it happens a lot on projects. And I think when it goes in that direction.
Yeah, that's very familiar with a lot of projects that we do as designers. And when you say explore, Would you say explored as in what? How do you explore? I mean, it would be interesting to see. Is it with sketches? Yes, the methodology. Is it with sketches? Is it with mood boards? Is it with?
So we start with mood boards, but not of design, of other designs. So the mood boards are either words or poems or images or art pieces or sculptures or whatever mid-journey generated stuff based on thematic sort of terminology that we think is relevant to what we're doing. So if it's like, I don't know, a simple thing, a brand related to children, color could be a theme, play could be a theme. Then we start looking at like, things we like that's linked to those themes.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to spend a few days sketching by hand. And I'd sort of ask my team not to sketch with a computer on purpose, because when they start working with the computer, they're limited with what they can do on the tool. But if they sketch by hand, it doesn't matter if the sketch is good or bad. It's more about finding the idea. What is it we're trying to say with that drawing or with that kind of form? And then we go around and we find things in the hand sketches. We just find little bits. We sometimes find things that were not intended originally, but somehow they work with something else. So we match them to what we're trying to do. Then we start to kind of, sketch on Illustrator to sort of find forms that we think, and sometimes ideas fall because that you can't make them work, or, you imagine something. Maybe the tool is not Illustrator, maybe the tool is 3D, maybe the tool is code. So you just kind of assign the tool to the idea and then see what's the best way to sort of start to see it being born in a way.
Samar, what do you imagine will be important in design in the coming 10, 20 years? We're going to talk about AI anyway.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we have to, right?
You just mentioned the journey.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think the time we're going through at the moment. I remember it when designers used to sketch by hand. I mean, we weren't probably designing at the time, but you'd cut out the letters, you'd stick them. You can't make changes because it's going to take 2 days to make the changes. So you just have to roll with whatever you kind of made, whatever the result is. And then the computers came. And at the beginning, the computers were not very powerful, but then all of a sudden, the computers became powerful, and you have all these new tools that you could use to create things that you would take you probably so much time to create before. And now we have AI. So there are chapters, I think, in our careers where there's big moments. And this is one of those big moments. And it didn't start now. It started a while back, but now because it's gone mainstream. So everyone is using it. And I think, I mean, I'm not of the view that AI is going to take our jobs. I think actually AI is just a tool, just another tool, just like Illustrator, Adobe, After Effects, all of these softwares that we use that change all the time. This is another tool.
That's quite relieving.
Yeah, that's what I think. But also the speed that this tool can do stuff for you. Actually, the tool, you have to know how to use it. This is a tool that you just need to learn how to prompt it or how to talk to it. And this is much simpler than learning a software like After Effects.
Exactly.
So we've been using it. I've been trying to use it, and I think a lot of my partners as well have been trying to use it. And it's a combination of like, using the ChatGPT version or Midjourney or any other software that generates images or words. So ChatGPT is funny and polite. So I use it to make my emails polite. I use it sometimes to edit things for me. I use it to get like a reference quotations or content that I need. If I want to talk, let's say, if I'm preparing a talk about, grit, I say, give me 10 quotes about grit, and he'll give me 10 quotes about grit. And this would have taken me 2 days to do, but then I'll pick the one I want. So our job is becoming more editorial and sort of curatorial, as opposed to just actually doing the research and reading everything so you can actually have the content. So I think ChatGPT is great for me. And I don't think it can replace writers either, because it has no character. It's just like it's a robot. So you can tell when a bit of text is written with this robot. But it has all the research, has all the content. So you can ask it anything you want. So it will actually save time. If you ask the right questions, it will save so much time.
Exactly.
Now for Midjourney is hit and miss. I've discovered lately that it's just like it could very easily copy people's style, which is terrible. Like, you can upload an illustration of someone and say, create another illustration of this in that style, and it would copy it. Sometimes well, sometimes badly, which is terrible. Like, I wouldn't want to use it like that. But if you give it the right links to me, so you say, create a building in the style of Dali, for example, or a building in Singapore in the style of Dali, you might get something interesting. You might not. In terms of what it knows, it doesn't read Arabic at all. I've tried to do a Eid card. I remember a while back on Midjourney, it just did not know how to. So it just looks at it as shapes. But in there is also an opportunity where you could think, okay, well, he's not going to understand Arabic. So once we kind of, it's going to take him a while. But can you actually work with, because it's only English speaking, all of these softwares are kind of catered for the center in a way. So, but you can play with that, I think. So I've asked him recently to create a playground in the style of Samar Maakaroun. I was like, let's see what I get.
And
I got really cool playground. I would play there.
it's interesting. I would like to
Basically,
see that.
It was all black and white. I'll send it to you on WhatsApp. It was all black and white with lines because it's kind of basically typography, but like it turned into this kind of random pattern. It was pretty cool.
Great.
I think I added the word organic before it. And then I just got this face and like probably I wouldn't have been able to imagine. So it's maybe if you put 2 or 3 things together, that it would take
That's where the surprise is.
to work out. Yeah, so you can be surprised. But I haven't used it for any actually commercial projects or anything. Like so far, I've just been playing a little bit to find out the limitations of this. Some partners have. Some partners have been using it.
It's a bit also on the edge of things. No, it's a bit sensitive to say, because I've been seeing now on Instagram, please don't use my work. This is not for AI. And they've been blocking Instagram, like the right for Instagram or any other AI features to use the work that they've designers or artists are also posting. So there is a certain danger in also somebody else saying, please give me a playground in Samar Maakaroun style. Other than the black and white, you might feel a bit copied.
Yeah, absolutely. But
I mean,
but people do this all the time. I mean, okay, now you can do it faster, so it makes it easier. But if you're gonna copy, how far are you gonna get? I just feel like, of course, all we can do is control our own actions and control how we use the tool, and that's perhaps something that every person should be educated to not abuse. Like, don't use the illustrator's work if you're not planning to pay that illustrator. If you want to do quick sketches and just put the name of the illustrator and say we will have to commission them, this is just an initial research. So there are industry rules around copyrights and around sort of what is allowable, what is not allowable. And actually, very often as well as designers, we come up with things that already existed. So then where is the gray line? And some people actually do copy. I've seen it in portfolios where people show me work of other people and tell me they did it. So
I mean, the rules are not quite obvious now with AI, are they? I mean, with AI, the rules are getting wishy-washy.
I think there's a big drive to regulate it in terms of intellectual copyright, but intellectual copyright as well has always been a contested issue, right? In terms of, I think all you can do is control your own actions, not copy anyone, do what you think is right. But at the same time, of course, if it's also has to do with the prompt with Midjourney. So if you tell Midjourney, give me a mark with arrows, it will churn out all the marks that have been done with arrows. So instead, I think the way to use it is to use it for research. So you actually see what's being done. So you don't do that, you go do something else.
Exactly. It's good.
But yeah, but in a way, like if you want to be lazy and steal other people's work, it might take you less time now.
I mean, this would be great advice for design students, I would say, because design students now would tend to cut corners in a way because of AI and what's going on. Let's end up with, what would you advise early career designers who have started on this journey now in this age, in this time? If you go back to yourself 20 years ago, or I don't know, when you graduated, and put yourself now, what would you think your would like to hear somebody advise you on?
Probably young people have in their nature, it's not to listen for advice, right? So I was one of them. It's like, what do you think you are to give advice, right? But in a way, I think like there's maybe two values that I've operated by, and I think they've always been rewarding. So one is curiosity, be curious about everything and anything. Don't block things just with like very shallow opinion. It's very easy to do that. But being curious is actually harder because you have to ask the right questions, look into like things that perhaps you didn't know existed. It might threaten your knowledge, but it's good to be curious in general. You always kind of come out the other end knowing a little bit more and being a better person for it. And the second one in terms of design is the craft. You have to master the craft. And how you do this is not by I suppose just doing one project. It's time. You have to do the time. In my opinion, it's like if you want to become good at After Effects, you need to spend like 2 to 3 years working properly with After Effects and making sense of your work, not just doing something pretty and say, hey, you know. So there is the craft takes time to master and to understand. And so these are the two things. This kind of is basically what I look for in designers. Someone who's curious and who's aware that craft is a labor of love, I guess.
Great words to end with this fantastic interview with Samar Maakaroun. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Yara, for asking such interesting questions. They made me think.
Ahla.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Yara. And see you soon, inshallah, in Beirut.
Thank you for listening. This was Khatt Chronicles, design stories from the Arab world.